Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the Game Speaker Series organized by Northeastern University, the College of Art, Media, and Design. And we are pleased today to have Alejandro Grossman. He's a game designer. And I will let James Cock, who is one of our PhD students and faculty, discuss with Alejandro about his career. And I will let you enjoy. And your questions will be at the end. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Natalie. I'm extremely excited to introduce Alejandro to everyone here. I've known Alejandro for a number of years, back when we were both students actually at USC, and Alejandro has kind of done it all. And he went from student game design to working at an indie studio, and now he is a senior game designer working on systems at Blizzard Entertainment. The structure of today is going to be Alejandro is going to talk a little bit about his journey, and then we're going to leave room for particular questions in case anyone wants to dig into any facets, since Alejandro has a very wide breadth and depth of knowledge. It'd be impossible to include all of it in a 1 hour time slot. So yeah, thank you all for attending, and Alejandro, feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you for having me and for that lovely intro, James. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Alejandro. I'm just gonna talk about my career and then we go through questions. So I guess I would say I started my career in my undergrad at USC, like James mentioned. In my undergrad, specifically in my sophomore year, we have a class called AGP, or not AGP, intermediate games, which basically you get one partner and you make a game with them. So my friend Steven and I decided to partner up, and we made a game called From Light, which was a 2D puzzle platformer based on long exposure photography, which was always impossible to explain to people how that worked. And we were very happy with our project. We really liked it. So we applied to a couple of festivals and ended up getting into the PAX 10, which is, I don't know if they're still doing it, but it used to be a thing where PAX selects 10 games that they take in, and they let you be at the show without having to pay anything, which is crazy. So we ended up getting into the PAX 10, and when we got there, or when I got in, I had an internship at the time that a cousin of mine helped me get. That was a gambling company, and my boss at the time told me, he's like, "Oh, you should talk to my friend Sharif over there. He also got in." And they got in for the Adventures of Pip, Sharif being the CEO of TikTok Games. So when I went there, we showed off. We were very excited. Nintendo even approached us, which was the craziest day of my life. We never shipped, but it was fun hearing from Nintendo. But anyway, at PAX, I ended up meeting Sharif, and he was a pretty cool dude. And he told me that if I needed an internship when I got back to LA, that he'd be happy to have me. So we kept in touch, went back home, I went back to school, reached out to Sharif, and he was very, very kind in letting me intern with him basically 1 day a week, which frankly meant I was kind of not doing anything. And Sharif was just being nice. So as that was going on and the school year was drawing to a close on my junior year, reached out to Sharif and asked him if I could do an internship over the summer. He very graciously accepted, and I worked there over the summer, where I made I did some QA and a little bit of level design for Bubble Shooters, which are match 3 mobile games that TikTok was working on. Then when we came back our senior year, now is when USC has this thing called AGP, or Advanced Games Project, where during your junior year, or generally whenever you want, generally it's either junior year or sophomore year for most people, pitch a game to the school, and everyone can pitch, and the school selects 5 or 6 games, or at least it used to be 5 or 6 at the time. I don't know if that's changed. And of those games, if you get in, you get to you get a whole team of students to make your game, and Stephen and I had decided to make from light, try to make a larger chunk of it, more polished, prettier. And we pitched it, we got in, and that's what we were doing. So we grew our team. By the end, we were a team of 35 students. That was a roller coaster of a year, just figuring out the art direction, figuring out the rights to the game, figuring out how we were going to pitch to publishers, which is all stuff honestly neither of us thought we would have to deal with. We thought it was just make a game and call it a day, but as soon as you try to go to market, things get a lot more complicated. Especially when you have been working the game for 2 years with multiple people and everyone wants the rights to it. So we end up working it for a year, and as we're nearing the end of that was our senior year of school, so we were going to graduate. We wanted to try to we started pitching the game to a bunch of publishers, sending out the demo that we had finished through AGP, and we tried that for about a year, and unfortunately we didn't land anything, but it was a great experience. Soon after graduating though, Sharif reached out to me again, and he asked me if I wanted to make a little bit of cash on the side as we were pitching. So he took me in as a part-time employee in October of 2017. He graduated in May of 2017. And I just started working initially as a production assistant. And doing that as we were doing From Light. And then partway through 2018, honestly, like probably around March or so, we were it was March because it was right after GDC, and we had started a FIG campaign, which was a Kickstarter equivalent, which I think is now defunct. And we were trying to raise, oh my gosh, I think $50,000 for it. And as we were trying to raise that money, we were short by the end, but Steven's family had offered to complete the funding, and we actually decided to not fulfill the funding, just because if we had fulfilled the funding, FIG had us on the hook for rev share at the end of the program, at the end once we released. And we were like, hey, if Steven's parents are bankrolling this, we'd rather not give our back end away for free to FIG. So we decided to not fulfill it. Anyway, so that's kind of where From Light was stuck in limbo. And we were also trying to do social media, which none of us knew how to do. I was especially bad at it. Anytime I was the one making posts, it never got responses. And we finished From Light. I was working at TikTok, and I asked Sharif if I could work full time, and he took me on. And then I worked at TikTok essentially for 4.5 years, starting as production assistant, or before as a QA intern. And once I was production assistant, then I got put on, I think, oh my gosh, as a level designer. Then I did a little bit of PM work. Then I moved back to game design. And then we started working on some incubation projects that I was really excited about. And I was really worried about the scope of the projects we were pitching. So to the game director at the time, who also happened to be the CTO, I proposed a smaller scope version, and he got really excited and liked my pitch. So because he was a CTO, he was a little bit too busy to be able to handle the game and all the other responsibilities he had. So I essentially started leading that project under his wing, and that was really excited. Cannot speak about what that project was, unfortunately. And while I was doing that, I was also doing some game design work. I was lead level designer for a mobile game that ended up not shipping. But on that one, I ended up leading, I think it was over 400 levels of match 3 gameplay. After that was going on, I really did not want to work at TikTok for much longer at that time, so I was applying places, and I bombed basically every single interview I landed. So I didn't have to, but I was really antsy. I wasn't sure if my initial project there was going to take off, and I wanted to do something. So at the time, my roommate, his name is Johannes. He and I worked together, or I pitched to him this idea of a word game roguelike that this word game roguelike, the idea was kind of to take Bookworm Adventures and make it into a roguelike. And as Johannes and I started talking about that, because Johannes was also looking for work, and I was frustrated at TikTok, I asked him, hey, would it be okay if I pitch it to Sharif, to TikTok, and maybe we can do it that way? And he said yes. So it was December at the time, which means it's a really bad time to apply for jobs. So no, we worked on that demo together. And in January, I showed it to Sharif, and he liked it. And then Sharif took me and Johannes on to make the demo, and they kept liking the project. So eventually we got greenlit at TikTok, and I was game directing and producing Writer's Block, which was that game. I worked on Writer's Block for about a year, and somewhere around June of that year, this was 2021, a friend of mine's dad was the general manager of Warcraft at Blizzard. So when he came over, we were hanging out, and I mentioned that I was thinking about applying again, maybe after Writer's Block shipped, and we finished hanging out, and he reaches out the next day, tells me, hey, my dad says you should apply to Blizzard. So I was like, you know what, sure, why not? And I kind of threw the application out on a whim. I heard back almost immediately. They sent me a test, and I submitted my test. And the literal next day after I submitted my test to Blizzard, their lawsuit comes out, which is quite the shocker. That meant that my application was obviously not a high priority anymore. So basically, I would check in like once a month with Blizzard, and they weren't really responding very much. I didn't really know what was happening. But eventually, we get to the new year. We officially announce Writer's Block that January. We wanted to be on Steam Next Fest. I think Steam still does this. I'm pretty sure Steam still does this, but back then you could only apply to one Next Fest and you had to get in. I think right now anyone can get in, but I really haven't kept up with how Steam operates in that sense. And we released our demo, and I'm still extremely proud of that demo. I miss that project. I do hope that someday we can finish it. And with Writer's Block, we I don't know what happened. But basically, after we worked on Writer's Block, and in January, a couple of recruiters started reaching out to me, asking if I was interested in jobs, and I turned all of them down. I was very happy working on Writer's Block. It had always been my dream to do exactly what I was doing. And somewhere around March, Blizzard finally gets back to me. I have my interviews, and I feel like those interviews felt very odd to me, just because I didn't know if I wanted it anymore, because I was so happy on Writer's Block, but I proceeded. And I was just thinking a lot about if I wanted the job or if I wanted to stay and finish writer's block and whatever else TikTok held for the future. But I ended up deciding that it might be good to have AAA experience. So once I got the offer, I took it. I got the offer a week before we took writer's block to PAX, which was very, very sad. But we did end up taking writer's block to PAX. I had already told Sharif about it. And I got sadder than he did when I told him. He's fantastic mentor. Yeah, we came back from PAX. PAX went amazing. It was honestly some of the best days of my life was showing writer's block at PAX. Everyone was so excited to talk to us, to hear about the game, to see the game, to play the game. There's something really magical about seeing all these people that you know absolutely nothing about play your game and see the joy as they engage with it. But yeah, we finished PAX. We came back 1 or 2 weeks later. It was my last day at TikTok. I took like a month break in between jobs, and I officially started at Blizzard in June 2022. I started as a mid systems designer, working on the rewards team on World of Warcraft. Rewards meaning basically high level, anytime you kill something, complete an activity, complete a quest in the game, the rewards team are who decides what we give you for it. And we basically create very large overarching systems throughout the game and all the items. Basically, we need to make sure that all the items are within bands. So it's just a role that requires a lot of communication. Since then, I've been working on World of Warcraft. I can't speak too much about what I've done in World of Warcraft because of NDAs, of course. But I had a big hand on Dragonflight and now on War Within. On Dragonflight, I did the Zone Rewards, partnered with one of my coworkers on the Anaran Plains, and then I did the renown tracks for patches 10.1 and 10.2, as well as was the rewards point for the 10.2 patch, which was the Emerald Dream area. And for War Within, I did the renown tracks for all 4 major factions of the expansion. And I also played a heavy hand in supporting the activity rewards for the 4 major zones. Yeah, that's my career in a nutshell so far. Obviously, it's been about half a year since that happened, so I can't speak to what's been going on since, but one of the biggest takeaways I've learned is, at least for me, starting my career at a place like TikTok Games, which is much smaller, and you have to wear a lot of hats just because of the resources available, right? Like the difference between TikTok Games and Blizzard is monumental. So at TikTok, like especially for example, when we were on writer's block, we were never able to get a producer. So I had to take the role of producer as well as game director, which meant I could not be as directly involved with the game as I wanted to be. But it also meant that I kept my entire team with work ready to go. And I was always available to answer questions. I was in essentially like, I guess, constant meetings, talking to people, making sure that the game's vision is enacted and still keeping it on a very tight timeline, which was my personal goal, because I believe in just getting the game out there as well in good quality, but just making sure the game gets out there and trying not to stall as much as possible. Blizzard is completely different, right? I'm not a designer, I'm specifically a rewards designer. So anything that is design work outside of rewards, it's to the point where I actually don't even know the intricacies or the specifics of how that works. I can probably find out if I, had a lunch or talk to other designers on the team. But by virtue of the mass scale of both the company and the product, you end up being a lot more siloed and kind of focused on your one little thing. So I'm immensely happy and grateful to have started my career at TikTok, because I really got a breadth of knowledge of all these different roles in the game industry. I learned what it means to be a producer. I can talk to producers differently just because of that experience, because I've been in their chair, and talk to product managers differently because I've, been in their chair. And while the role isn't the exact same across companies, I now have a sense of what the responsibilities are, what they're trying to accomplish, and it's just given me it's been very eye-opening, had a lot of opportunities. So yeah, that's, I guess, a quick overview of my career. I see a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll address those, and I guess then we'll open the floor. Or James, did you want to do this differently?
No, that actually sounds perfect. Yeah, and thank you so much for that overview. I think it's going to be really valuable for people to kind of know what areas they can ask questions in, what they should prod at, that kind of thing. So I think totally down if we start off with the questions in the chat, if you are good with that.
Yep. So I see sorry if I mispronounced your name. Do I know Danny Bilson from UC Games? Yes. Danny Bilson was the professor when we did AGP, and he's still a friend. We talk every so often, and we play board games every so often. Danny Bilson's fantastic. I was very happy to have had the opportunity to meet him, to work with him. And another phenomenal mentor. If you get an opportunity to work with him in a capacity, I would strongly recommend it. Then you're partnering with an AGP team with the UC as a producer. Would you happen to have any tips regarding team management and scheduling? So AGP is tough because they're all students. And this is gonna sound really weird, but you essentially have no leverage, right? And we learned this on From Light, if one of your teammates just says like, oh, hey, busy week, I had 2 essays, couldn't work, sorry. And that's it. You can't do anything about that. So I would say just be nice. AGP matters, it's a portfolio piece, but at the end of the day, it's more likely than not just going to be a portfolio piece, just by how the industry works and the size of the team that you're going to have, because you're dealing with students who might not work as much, just by virtue of busy and all that stuff. So just be nice, be understanding, be empathetic, and try to get as much work as you can out of them as a producer, and try to help them as much as you can. I know it's very difficult. I'm very grateful to that. Once I graduated at USC and started in the industry, that those situations just really don't happen. You don't have someone who just didn't do the work, because it's a job now. There's like real world stakes. So, yeah.
A quick follow-up to that, I'm just curious. It's great to hear, being empathetic and understanding, everyone's a student, and you're totally correct about the leverage thing. Even in my, I want to say, professional career, it's like when you work on games that aren't monetized yet, when you're doing things that are a hobby that had not switched over to a point where you can start making payment on it. Of course, it's very hard to keep people enthralled about the work. So I guess a follow-up for knowing how to kind of respond to other people. I'm also curious, what do you think are good strategies for how you can kind of temper yourself for those situations? Like, how can you leverage yourself to make sure that you get the most out of those experiences?
So the answer is motivation, which is hard, right? You gotta motivate your team. What we would do, we did a couple of things that I was very happy with on From Light, which was, we had a weekly thing where we had a plushie for one of our characters, and we had a meetings. Our meetings were on Sundays. At least when I was at SC, AGP meetings were generally on Sundays, just because it's hard with everyone's class schedules. And basically every week someone got the plushie, and you give it to someone else as a recognition of the work that week. So that just kind of created a healthy culture. If someone told us they were busy, we would never get upset. I mean, we would like internally be upset, but we were like, oh, it's okay, don't worry. Like, what can you do this week? Right? That's kind of how we tackled it. But it was always, internally disappointing and internally like, oh my God, are we gonna finish? And that's why you get such large teams at the end of the day. But it's AGP is very, very challenging. But it's an incredible experience that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world.
Yeah, thank you. Before we get back to the questions directly in the meeting chat, someone has used the question and answer feature. Ooh, so I was going to just read that one off. Unless do you have access to that? No worries if not. I'm happy to read it.
Okay.
Yeah, had one interview with Blizzard for learning and development, but unfortunately did not move forward. This spurred me forward to learning about game development. Love to hear your tips on free resources or college courses to learn game design/game development. Primarily interested in game design and production.
Oh gosh. I've watched a couple of extra credits, I think it's called, some videos for a bit. I thought those were pretty cool. But I played a lot of games growing up, like especially like Warcraft 3 custom maps. And I think I would attribute a lot of the design sense that I developed to those. I think there was a lot of value in how much Warcraft 3 custom maps I played. Not specifically because it's Blizzard, but because they're fan made. And a lot of time you're playing fan made stuff indiscriminately. You're gonna deal with a lot of not great content. Which I think has a lot of value in playing a lot of that stuff, because you start kind of like intuitively getting a sense for what you think is good and what you don't think is good. And at least for me, I think that's what kind of like helped me get my design sense and propel me into the position I'm in today. In regards to production, I actually have no idea what's out there. I don't know why, but even from my time at USC, I was always very mindful about scope. I know one of the issues a lot of students face is they pitch something that's very out of scope, or at least again back when I was there, I was almost 10 years ago now. And we that helped, right? Just keeping things in scope for me, and then that kind of helped with keeping production how it would work. Then when I was at TikTok and saw how it worked better, I kind of designed my own processes by virtue of like just talking to other people there, and they're like, okay, this is a roadmap. I'm like, okay, I need to build a roadmap now, especially when we were pitching writer's block. I built a roadmap for the whole project, which is like, here's how long we think it's going to take, here's the team size we think we're going to need. And I mapped that out. And I created a pipeline first, which was kind of like, in what order do we need to create the tasks? Do we need to accomplish the tasks in order to not block people and to have the smoothest development? So that was a pretty cool thing that I really like, having pipelines and then building schedules off of that. But again, my production knowledge is extremely limited. I was just intuiting stuff, so this could be like horrible practice in a larger product. Yeah, any other questions, James, or should I continue down the chat?
That is the only one in the Q&A. Yeah, and thank you so much. So we will get back to the chat.
Sure. So next, I see Connor. Were you able to use any of the level design experience for the game that didn't ship as some portfolio work? I was not. So basically my resume just said like Vlad, level design for unshipped match 3 mobile title. And that's that's the industry, unfortunately. But the advantage of that being the industry is everyone knows. Everyone knows that's how it works. So as long as you can speak to your experience in an interview, you know, without breaking your NDAs, of course. Always be careful about that because you never know who's listening and what gets back. I was just able to talk about that, and then they would ask me about my experiences working on the team or what kind of design principles you applied to the levels, and what was your process like, and that's all stuff you can talk about generally. It's not, you're probably not going to break any NDAs. Just be smart about how you talk about it. You know, don't say something you shouldn't. Be positive. Yeah. Next question from Ben. Do you wish you had specialized early in your career, or are you glad to have gained the experience across a wider range of roles? I am much happier that I had the experience across the wider range of roles. I think it has made me a more well-rounded developer and more understanding of other disciplines. I feel like the difference in one of the advantages of TikTok is that I met all these people. Like at Blizzard, I know some people how to design. Like we have our producers, so those are people you interact with, but I virtually do not interact with artists, with engineers very often, with product managers, right? I basically on my day-to-day almost exclusively interact with designers. So that also kind of shapes the perspectives and the conversations that you have. Whereas at TikTok, every day you're talking to artists, every day you're talking to product managers. It's just that smaller experience kind of like broadens your experiences and your spectrum. Next question from Daksh. So we're a designer, do you design just the positive feedback in game, also design negative feedback based on players' actions? Also, can the reward be emotional? I'm not sure I understand the question. Basically, players complete an activity, we give a reward. We want the rewards to be commensurate with the effort required for the activity. If the activity wasn't huge, we don't want to give a huge reward, right?
Also, I have, I guess, a quick follow-up question to the last question, and then one also to this too. Are there any situations that you've experienced where you think someone specializing would make more sense than having the broader approach?
Possibly. The advantage of specializing is like you can talk very deeply about a specific subject. So, for example, I've been specializing a lot more now at Blizzard, and I found my niche in essentially like modeling with Excel, so like economies, progression systems. And I know, and that's my forte. And I was already starting to do that at TikTok without realizing it. Like I built a pretty comprehensive, the way we balanced writer's block was through a very comprehensive Excel document that simulated the whole game. And by running it multiple times, you could see like, okay, this combat's a little too powerful, or this combat's not strong enough. And that gave us a lot of power and a lot of confidence in our balance for the overall game. And that is something I took to Blizzard, and I've done that, for example, when creating reputations for the factions is something that I was able to use. So something like that is good. The disadvantage, though, is like when you're specialized, finding new roles is difficult in that you're probably going to be looking for specialized roles. Whereas if you have a broader knowledge, you're going to have an opportunity to apply to more stuff, but it might also be more difficult in interviews because you're not going to be able to talk as deeply about things. So they both definitely have their advantages. I just think in general at the start of your career, I would generally advocate for having a wider experience, non-specialized.
Yeah, thank you. And then for the follow-up question, what I was kind of curious too is in terms of negative feedback and positive feedback, understanding that a lot of your work has to do with the economy and numbers. Something I remember hearing, I think it was specifically World of Warcraft, is how they changed the playtime punishment into a playtime bonus just by simply changing the wording. Was that World of Warcraft? Where it was like rather than you get regular XP for playing for the first couple hours and then it drops off to 50%, changing the language so it's like you get double XP for the first couple hours for playing and then it drops down to normal. Is that something that you also handle, or like the way that these things are communicated to players? Like, how easy is it switch to something being negative or positive just by word changing, or, how much do players notice the numbers versus like the polish or the way that it's presented?
Yeah, I think that would be something my team would do, but like specifically that one, that is something that happened when World of Warcraft first came out. So the most like the people that did that might not be at Blizzard anymore. We're talking 20 plus years ago. That's honestly never come up. I don't know if it's because we all intuit it or because just that specifically doesn't come up as much. So I really just don't know how to answer. Like I'm sure if someone created a reward system or design that would have a negative instead of a positive spin, we would probably talk about it. We have pretty regular design philosophy conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, next question. What technical skills do you find more useful in working in your various projects? From Justin. I think right now the technical skill I'm most proud of is my ability with Excel. I can do a lot of really complicated stuff with Excel, especially because I can get into Visual Basic, which is it's a programming language, and I can program Excel to do whatever I want it to do. So it's something I can generally use to impress people because they never expect Excel to be able to do the stuff that you can do if you start programming with it. Which comes in super handy, and the advantage of Excel is no one's going to be afraid of touching Excel. So if you create complicated stuff in Excel, with macros, people are just like wowed very easily. So I think that was pretty handy. Other stuff. That's the main thing, like, is and Excel has like so many different things you could do, right? Because when I was doing production at TikTok Games, my initial roadmaps were all done in Excel. That became difficult because they were very difficult to edit. But I was able to make them very pretty and dynamic and put in some bells and whistles that other producers at the studio were not doing, for example. So a lot of my stuff ended up being templates, at least while I was there, which is really cool to see. Next question by Farva. What game engine do you prefer working in? I don't really know. So I've worked in Unity. I've barely worked in Unity. Writer's Block and FromLight were both done in Unity, but my work in FromLight was I did level design where we did the intermediate, but once I was directing it, I basically never touched the project. I was more leading the team and doing all the additional stuff that no one else wanted to do. Had to deal with legal, had to deal with the business side. Had to make sure the game's vision is enacted. So I was more like playing builds rather than messing around in engine. And Writer's Block, same thing. I was messing around in Excel because we had Unity take in our Excel tables, and that's how we would balance the game. And the reason you would do that is that way you don't have to wait for a new build to test content. You just are always able to. So that just made us be able to be very agile in our design and rebalancing. And working on WoW, we have a custom game engine called WoW Edit. So that's the only one I've had. That's the one I've had the most direct exposure to. And I like it because it allows me to basically take stuff from it, manipulate it in Excel, and throw it back into the engine. So I guess Excel would be my answer, which is probably not what you would expect. Yeah. Next question by Rishav. What are the aspects of your portfolio or resume that you should focus on for trying to apply to design roles? I would say just make stuff. I had the very fortunate opportunity to have all these things that I've worked on be like for class or work, so that kind of helped me. But if you have stuff you've worked on, that's what's really gonna catch people's eyes. And put links on your resume to your stuff. Like, be proud of the stuff you've done. Showcase it. Gosh, next question from Reggie. So let's see. Breaking into PC games, someone coming from mobile games, senior game center at Zynga's. Only worked on mobile games. I want to try getting into PC games. How can I try breaking into the PC game, especially as PC games have specialization where most of us been a generalist? Is going indie and making my own game on the side the only choice? So I also basically kind of came from mobile. I think mobile has a lot of advantages. I think it's frowned upon a lot more than it should be. The thing with mobile is mobile tends to be a lot faster development wise because just that market moves so fast. And it's a lot more business focused. Not that like it's all business focused, right? At the end of the day, you're entering an industry, you're entering a business. The goal is to make money. At least for anyone who has money, that's the goal. And I think understanding that is important and being comfortable with that is important. The indie space might be a lot less keen on making money and more about making cool, fun products. But the risk you're going to run there is the odds of you getting big funding with that mentality are slim, which means you're probably going to be in a higher risk situation. And the likelihood of an indie game making it big is pretty low. Which again, just disincentivizes people with money, investors, to look into it. So specifically how to break into PC games. I think it's just how you position what you've done. If you just talk like, oh, I only worked on mobile games, but now I want to do PC, I think especially recruiters who might not be as well informed about it might not understand how what you've done or why that's relevant to the role that you're applying to. But if instead you talk about the specifics of the thing you've done in game. So for example, when I worked on mobile games at TikTok, I would say, hey, I designed the progression system and the economy for this game. I created a parameterized economy model that we use to balance the progression in game with collaboration from product managers. And just that framing, I think, helps to show like, hey, I understand these things. Like specifically for me, I think one of the advantages of being a system designer is that it is a thing that can apply anywhere. What I mean by that is like every game needs a progression system, every game generally. So having something like that is you're just applying different lenses and modeling it slightly different depending on the type of game that you're making. Yeah. And of course, if you make your own game on the side, honestly, that will always help. That'll always only be a good thing. So I would not be I would definitely encourage you to do that. That's something that you have the opportunity and time to do. Cool. Next question by Junyu. I think you should portray yourself differently when applying to AAA versus indie. However, I feel like it's opposite from these studios. Yeah, I think you should portray yourself differently for every single company you're applying for. Again, if you have the time and you're willing to put in that amount of effort for every application, because every company is going to look for something different. You can see it with how they word their company website, how they word their job postings. Like look at what they're looking for and try to tailor yourself to them, right? Because if you tailor yourself to them, they're going to be much more excited to take you on. Like I feel like working on some place like Sledgehammer versus Blizzard is like, even though they both used to be subsidiaries of Activision Blizzard, now Microsoft. The experiences are probably not that similar internally, just because of the type of game you're making, because of the culture they've created. So just pay attention into that, and if you can position yourself in more of a way that lines up with what they're looking for, that will always only benefit you. I do think AAA is more likely going to want generalists. Sorry, other way around. Indie is more likely to always want generalists because they need to be scrappier. They probably don't have nearly as much money, and you are, as an employee, likely going to get paid less. Whereas in AAA, you're probably going to get paid more, but you're going to be hyper specialized because they have the resources to hyper specialize you. Next question. What would you recommend to new incoming designers, from Genevieve, especially in regards to making games that are interesting or catch people eye? What are they looking for? Just make stuff. Whatever you make, be able to talk to the things that you make and specifically what you made and why that's cool and what technical challenges you overcame. Because if you can talk to that, then you're going to be able to I think to like better impress the recruiters, the hiring managers, just because like you can talk to what you did a lot. Like if you're taking credit for someone else's work and they start asking about it and you can't answer well, that might not be a good sign. So just make sure that you're able to talk about what you do and to catch people's eyes. I kind of just want to say just make stuff. I know it's kind of like a non-answer, but you know, the more stuff you make, the more stuff you have in your resume, the more experience you're going to have, which is good, and the more you might end up standing out, and people are going to be like, oh my god, he did this and this and this and this, and then it just looks more exciting. And you know, if you have the time and you can make a portfolio website and have a portfolio website be part of your portfolio, right? Like if you polish it, if you give a good game feel, that helps, right? And this is it really is how much effort you want to put into it and you are able to put into it. Because there's definitely like a wide range of things you can do. It's just how much time and effort are you willing to spend.
Yeah, thank you. So before we move on to the next question, two quick ones. The first one is, are you cool with going till 10:05 since we started a little late, or do you have a hard out at 5?
No, that's okay. I don't have a meeting this morning.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. And then the second question is, I'm glad you brought up resumes because I was actually just about to kind of ask a follow-up, sorry, not resumes, portfolio sites. I was wondering, do you have a portfolio site you could share, or are you kind of like locked in and beyond a portfolio point?
I unfortunately do not have a portfolio. Honestly, I should.
Okay.
This is more like I just personally I kind of don't want to think about work after work. Like work, like I guess that's another thing with games. I don't know if you all are grads or undergrads or if you have had work experience, but at least for me, something I learned is I want work to end when I'm out. Like I'm salaried, so it doesn't exactly work that way, but I do care about my work-life balance. And if someone messages me after hours, I'll respond. And if I have to stay late a day or two, like things happen, I understand. But in general, I like to try to keep that separate, which to my detriment also means that once I'm done with work, I don't want to do anything work related, which sometimes is applications, resumes, if I'm ever looking, portfolios. But yes, even if you have a solid career behind you, a portfolio website can only ever help you. Even just the experience of building.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
And then a follow-up to that follow-up, and sorry for putting you on the spot with the portfolio question
All good.
is how would you recommend portfolio differences between AAA or indie? I know something that when I was a student, I think that people were kind of cautious about was when they were applying for bigger companies, they wanted to show personality, but they didn't want to seem, I want to say, like too edgy or individualistic. Like they were trying to portray more of a company culture fit with their portfolio site. And kind of like, or kind of unlike, I guess, a resume or preparing for the individual jobs, assuming that someone isn't building a portfolio for every application they're doing, do you have any advice or ideas on how people could design, I guess, either towards the general field that they're looking for?
Um, I would say if you want to work at a certain company, make that kind of thing. Like obviously, for example, like I think World of Warcraft's a great example just because it's an MMO. You're very unlikely to make an MMO in your free time because just the scale of the project is insanity. Um, but for example, let's say you really like World of Warcraft, write a little design document on an activity you could do. Write a little design document on how you would reward it, or create they have existing classes, right? So just kind of like create a class simulator in Excel that shows like you understand their product and you can add value to it. So, I mean, those are obviously all examples for World of Warcraft, but that's kind of like how I would target a company. But even though those would be targeted for a Blizzard for the World of Warcraft team, I still think that you can do that with other companies, other games, right? Like if you were like I know they're not around anymore, but like for example, Zectronics, who made a lot of programming games. You want to apply there, create, design new challenges for one of their existing games. Show them that you created a new weird programming language that they could build a game out of. Like, don't be afraid that they're gonna steal your ideas. Like, I know that's a weird to get over because you're like, oh, but it's my idea. They're going to take my work, especially if it's published for free as a portfolio site. Like realistically speaking, if they're hiring and they see your work and they want to copy it, that probably means they might want to hire you. Yeah. Any other follow-ups, James? Should I continue down the list?
That is it. Yeah, thank you so much. That was really insightful. I actually had never thought about the idea of like applying to an MMO company and then like how do you demonstrate that you can build an MMO? Like I do know one person that's done it. That being said, it's not a heavy feature MMO, and the more I think about it, it's very apparent why there's only one person I know that's done it.
Yep. Okay. If time from Wendy, if time, what games are you playing now? What games do you tend to go back to? Let me see, let me open my Steam. So Here's a Storm Hots is a game that I'm always playing. I always tend to go back to play that with some of my college friends, and I just really enjoy that game.
What's the name?
Here's the Storm,
Heroes of the
Wizards
Storm.
MOBA. Um, Recently I've started getting back into Slay the Spire, which has been fun. I tend to play more like puzzle games, so kind of like play them, beat them quickly, move on. Um, But yeah, let's see. What does Steam say I've been playing lately? I recently got Rift of the Necrodancer, which TikTok Games just shipped this week, along with Brace Yourself Games. All really good people. It's a fun game, cute game. Would recommend. Played this game called Lock Digital, LOK. That was pretty fun. I played Escape Simulator with one of my friends. I replayed Cuphead in hard mode over my winter break. That was a lot of fun. Started exploring like idle games because it was fun. Tried one called Dixium, Idle Colony, Cookie Clicker. Played a game called Mini Shoot Adventures, which is pretty fun. Yeah, just kind of peruse Steam and whatever my Google feed feeds me. Mostly.
Thank you. So we're almost out of time. We only have 2 final questions, so I was going to ask if we could rapid fire those, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. Oh, the 2 final questions in the chat.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. So from Hyun, how beneficial would a graduate program in computer science and computer be for my future career? Thanks, yes, good, but considering pursuing a graduate degree here or another university. Honestly, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people at Blizzard don't really have graduate degrees, or at least that's the impression I get. They kind of just got in. There's so many people, specifically at Blizzard. I don't know how it works at other companies. A lot of people at Blizzard came in as QA and then just worked a ton in QA and then eventually made the jump from QA to design. I personally dislike that. Not in the sense that like QA don't deserve to go up, but in the sense that like QA should be a role in and of itself that is self-respected. I feel like if you join the role just to climb up, like that's great, especially if you're good at it. But at the end of the day, to me, what that means is it's almost not treated like a full role, and that's part of the company's fault. And that it's not promoting you to stay as a QA person, but instead like trying to tease you out there.
Thank you. I think, well, one thing I'll really quickly supplement that with is I think a lot of it, and QA kind of covers it too, is just having the understanding to be able to communicate with other team members. So be it the education or working within the company.
Yep.
And then the final question, how many games would you recommend for your portfolio?
Oh my God. Gosh, I don't know. Honestly, I don't even want to say as many as you can make, but like I think it matters more. I think you should do quality over quantity. And by that I mean don't like hyper polish something to the point where like you could have spent your time doing something else, but like make stuff that you are proud of and finish them when you feel they're finished and then move on. Like don't hyper fix it on it, but also don't like scattershot is what I would recommend. I know, James, you're like the complete opposite with your, was it 100 games in
no,
5 years?
you're I'm 100% with you. I think 5 projects is great. It's just pick your best projects. Don't show something that's going to raise more questions than it's going to show answers and ability.
Exactly.
So I'm totally with you. Yeah, we have any final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up.
No, that's all. Thanks all for the great questions. It's been great talking to you all. Yeah, you can find me on, I guess, LinkedIn. If you have any questions, send them to me. I'm not very good at checking LinkedIn, so I might be a little slow, but yeah, thanks so much for hosting me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, this was a bit of a different experimental format. Last time we had a straight presentation, and I was thinking, like, you know what, Alejandro has such a diverse background. Like, it might be better to let people kind of ask questions and get in the weeds. And I'm really happy with how this worked out. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and there's a whole lot of things I even learned today, and that's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. And when is the next one, James? Do you want to announce it?
Give me one moment. We have another speaker next month. It is with Leah Norod, who is a entertainment or talent. I think the term is executive representative at William Morris. She works with people in the music industry, but she also occasionally does game law and knows people that work directly in game law. That is March 13th. This talk will be interesting because it's a little bit different. We're not directly talking about game design stuff, but as somebody who has also gone through a game design program, I can tell you for certain that being able to ask questions about some of this business stuff and some of the legal stuff is incredibly important, especially when you want to put things in your portfolio, when you want to know dividing teamwork, and if you want to sell things farther down the line. All these things are really good to keep in mind early on.
Great.
And yeah, to
Thank
reiterate,
you.
that is March 13th.
Yeah, March 13th. Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Alejandro. And thank you everyone for attending today. And we'll see you next month. So